Hello and welcome to another F12 programming. My name is Mike Hewitt.
And this is Jacob Rains.
And we're going to be working on implicit conversions.
Yes, we are going to write our own implicit converter to convert between one type to another type. You don't see it a lot. I think it's an underused feature in .NET, so I kind of wanted to point it out. So what I've done, I'm in one of our old projects here. I've made a couple of classes, and these are pretty standard. We have a coordinate. Sometimes we have an XY coordinate, which looks really similar to just like this, where we have an X and a Y. I'm using two doubles for this. And then I've created another one, which is almost identical. The only difference is this one is using a, what do they call it, a polar coordinate system, where it's an angular and a distance. Doesn't really matter what these classes are. I just needed something to illustrate with. So what we're going to do is we want to convert an XY coordinate into a polar coordinate, one of these AD coordinates. So in my code here, I've gone ahead and I've instantiated P1 as an XY point, and I've set it to 10, 10. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to instantiate this AD here, and I'm going to set it equal to P1. And what you're going to see is you're going to get an error because these are two different types that don't match each other.
Yep.
You would totally expect to get an error on that. If I go and look at my error list here, cannot implicitly convert type point XY to point AD. Totally makes sense. So what I'm going to do is, and I can go into either my XY class or my AD class, it doesn't matter, but I just randomly chose the XY class. And I'm going to write an implicit converter. I've got one already done here. I'm going to show you how it works. And actually, to make this, I need to write implicit here. Implicit, public static implicit operator. And this is saying that I'm going from an XY to an AD. And I wrote a little bit of trigonometry here. You don't have to follow along here. But basically what we're going to do is, instead of being at point 10, it's now going to be at a particular angle a certain distance away, like a vector. And we're going to return that here. So what happens now, if we go back to our program, our error went away. So as soon as I said P2 is equal to P1, it immediately runs that implicit converter and converts it into the AD type. Mm-hmm. If I want to go backwards, I'm going to make a new XY, and I want to continue going. I'm going to need to write another implicit converter. Implicit. And this one's the same thing, except it's going backwards. This one's going from an AD, an angle and a distance, to an XY coordinate. Mm-hmm. Same thing. I run some math calculations, and then I return my new XY. And now when I come back to my program, all my errors are gone. I can now implicitly flip back and forth between these two types.
So going back to what's the implicit and the operator? Do they always go together? Or explain that a little bit.
You can make implicit operators that go in one direction. In this case, we've written them in both directions, so we can go backwards. Mm-hmm. We can also, when we have things that are lossy, mm-hmm. sometimes we lose a little bit of information. You can imagine if you were going from a double to an int, you're going to lose information. So a lot of times when they do things like that, they'll call these explicit instead of implicit. And they do the exact same thing. Matter of fact, that works just fine. The only difference is when you go back to your program, you're going to get errors again, and you're going to get a new error this time. Cannot implicitly convert. Actually, it reads exactly the same. An explicit conversion exists, so it actually tells you there's an explicit conversion. The difference is now I have to tell it to use it.
Okay.
AD. What am I doing here? AD. There we go. So now when I put that cast in front of there, what I'm telling it is it's okay to use that explicit conversion because I explicitly told you it's all right.
Gotcha.
And I accept that it may not be a perfect conversion. Now, we've used these things in a few programs that we've worked on for things like the DTO objects.
Okay.
So I remember one of the projects we were working on, we had a DAL object, and we wanted to convert it to DTO or vice versa in the back end, because we wanted to, what we wanted to send to the client, we didn't want to send the actual the object that had all the fields for everything. You know, like if you have a user object, maybe you don't want to send the social security number, so you write a DTO, a data transfer object. We could implicitly convert back and forth. Anything where you have, like I said, multiple classes where maybe you need to go back and forth, and you want it to be easy. You don't want to have to write some conversion function and call it out every time, or a utility an extension method, or anything like that.
And then the other thing I saw on there, so operator. Can you explain that?
Oh, this word right here?
Right.
Okay, so there are other operators, which well, I'm trying to figure out how. We'll probably need another video right there.
Yeah, it might be.
So this is a conversion. So we are converting from this to that, from the AD to the XY. You have other operators that aren't conversion operators, like plus, minus, multiply, divide. All of those can theoretically be created. So if you wanted to, I mean, we don't normally add objects together. We add numbers together, which are value types. We add strings together. You don't usually add, you know, this employee plus this object, but you could write an operator to handle a mathematical function as well.
So maybe, like, my birthday is, or my age is this, a sentence like that, but you actually pull it in to date their birthday and doing some math, and combine it into a string.
Well, I was thinking more like if you had. Let me think of a good example here.
I know I'm trying to think of a good example. We can't find one.
Well, okay, so like I have a one of my projects where I have an ORM. You have these objects that have an iSavable interface.
Okay.
If I add two of them together, this plus that, I can have it give me a transaction back.
Okay.
Which is weird way, but I've used that in my code before to do things like that. Or this employee plus this employee returns a group of employees, maybe, or a collection.
Okay.
You could write some weird stuff in there. I'm trying to think of a better one. Usually, like time spans, like would be a more complex one. Which, if you add two time spans together, it already does this. But if you add two time spans together, you get a larger time span. You know, so somebody wrote an operator for the plus that said, "Hey, if you add these together, go ahead and return back a larger time span of the two."
Yep.
So that'll be a whole nother video. We'll have to do that.
Well, this is good, because there are times. Yeah, you're right. There are times we've used it in our codes. Thank you for watching that video from F12 Programming. Please remember to like and subscribe. That does so much for us in the ratings. You have no idea. Also, don't forget to comment below. I hope you enjoyed, and good luck coding.